10 years ago, a game called Spellbound was announced by Chucklefish. 2 years later, we heard about it again, and this time, it had a new name: Witchbrook. And then, we didn't hear much for the longest time, so the majority of us assumed that the project was dead. In 2025, during a Nintendo Direct, out of nowhere, Witchbrook reappears. It's got a new trailer, a new look, and it even has a winter 2025 release date. And just as people were finally getting excited for this game again, Witchbrook gets delayed and the excitement dwindles down once more. You see, during this decade, Chucklefish, the developers behind Witchbrook, went through development hell and back, and they faced some pretty serious allegations, from unpaid labor to child labor, even claims about a workspace riddled with bullying. This leaves me with a big question. As much as we're very excited for the project, should we be worried? Is the game in trouble? Or are the delays simply due to the studio's no-crunch policy? Perhaps there's something messier happening behind the scenes? This is everything that I found 60+ tabs later. After we heard about Spellbound in 2016 and we saw the name change in 2018, Chucklefish found themselves in major controversy with some pretty serious allegations. If you don't know about the studio, they published many games, including some you might have heard of, or maybe some that you'll love yourself. Think of Locomotive, Eastward, Wargroove 2, and more. But our concern today is about a specific game called Starbound. Sounds familiar, right? Starbound, similar to Spellbound, which was Witchbrook's first name. To understand the concerns that are happening about Witchbrook, we need to talk about the story behind Starbound. In April 2013, Starbound took the pre-order route on the Humble Store, and within 24 hours, over 10,000 people had backed it. By May 2013, the game had raised over $2 million. In the same year, it entered its beta state on Steam, which today we refer to as Early Access, and it eventually saw its full release in July 2016. If you've never heard about this game before, think of Terraria, but set in space. It's a game where you create your own story, you explore planets, and you build your own world. It's a pretty fun sandbox. I actually bought the game myself back when it was in early access, and then I played it on full release, and one thing that I always noticed is how much the community adores this game. Between the various discussion forums and the amount of mods available to add more content into the game, the community's involvement and passion is clear. Starbound currently sits at a very positive review score. At first glance, you're gonna think, well, this is pretty good. But once you take a look at some of the players' feedback, you're gonna see an underlying issue. You see, Chucklefish abandoned the game long ago. Let's take a look at this Steam review, which was posted very recently. And it explains that while the game is great, Chucklefish abandoned the game a long time ago. And so, the developers who worked on this game are also long gone. Now we have a game that relies on its community modding support to thrive. So, what happened? In 2019, Chucklefish were accused of exploiting around a dozen voluntary contributors during Starbound's development, and many of these volunteers were actually teenagers at the time. In this article published by Oleg Nesterenko at Game World Observer, we see that the accusations first came to light by one of the developers, Damon Reese, who opened up about his experience on Twitter. He called the studio's practices as unethical, and he questioned how a studio earns millions in profit yet doesn't pay their contributors. He said, "I started out my game dev career working on Starbound for almost 2 years. I was 16. I worked hundreds of hours and wasn't paid a single cent for it, while the company made unbelievable amounts of money off of my labor, and that of around a dozen other unpaid workers. A couple of them ended up working at the company, but it doesn't mean that they weren't exploited too. I spent a long time being very afraid that talking about this would tank my career. But this is indisputable truth, and I am, for now, in a stable and safe position. So here you go." And the allegations started to snowball from there. Concept artist Christine Crossley and composer Clark Powell confirmed these claims. Powell revealed that he almost completed work on the music for the game. But then the Chucklefish founder, Finn Bryce, remember this name because we're gonna talk about him a bit more, he informed Powell that the job was not going to be paid, so the studio and the composer parted ways. And then Toby Fox, the developer of Undertale, which is a game that a lot of you adore, also confirmed the story. And so he echoed the same sentiment, as he had also worked on some of the music for Starbound. Ro Watson, the founder of Igloosoft Games, added even more to the story, giving us further context to what happened. He said, Instead, those who were passionate and wanted to help with the game that wasn't a paid member were given a standard contributor contract, and they were told that it was industry standard. Put simply, it was either sign that contract and get your foot in the door or get out. A few people were happy to donate their time, or they just wanted to see their work in the game. But for most people who wanted to work their way up to a paid position, they'd be forced to sign that contract and waive any right to compensation. And I can understand why it would take such a long time for people to come forward and talk about the obstacles that they dealt with and all of the unethical things that they had to go through. And these were pretty serious allegations, so surely Chucklefish had to reply. So here is their response. We're aware and saddened by the current allegations against Chucklefish regarding Starbound's early development. During this time, both the core crew and community contributors were collaborating via a chat room and dedicated their time for free. Community contributors were under no obligation to create content, work to deadlines, or put in any particular number of hours. Everyone was credited or remunerated as part of their agreement. Then they continued to say that it's been almost a decade since Starbound's development first began. And from then, Chucklefish has grown considerably into an indie studio that has a strong emphasis on good working practices, providing a welcoming environment for all employees and freelancers. Our doors remain open to any related parties who wish to discuss their concerns with us directly. But you see, this response was not enough. Damon Reese pushed back and he was like, hold on a minute, no, let's talk about this. And he said that contributors were further enticed with the promise of possible employment at Chucklefish in the future. He also disagreed with what Chucklefish stated in regards to not having any deadlines, so he said deadlines were absolutely in place. If not formal, then definitely heavily implied. Regardless of any contracts signed, it's massively unethical to allow workers to contribute huge amounts of content for no pay, when you, the leader of the team, are walking away with millions of dollars in personal revenue share. If your game sells over 2.5 million copies, and your only excuse for not treating people ethically is, but the dozens of teenagers whose labor we exploited signed contracts, you may need to do some soul searching. And you think this is like everything? Well, no. Was even worse. We had Ro Watson say that Chucklefish was a horrible place to work and they were being bullied by Bryce. Remember the person that I told you, remember his name? Yeah, being bullied by Bryce seemed to be commonplace at Chucklefish. So this leaves us with the question of, when you are promised to get your foot into the games industry, an industry which I can personally say, when I moved to the UK, I can see it's so difficult to get into, when should you get compensated for all of your extra effort? Legally, if you sign a contract that says your work is not going to be paid, then a company is not obliged to compensate you. But in this case, letting teenagers do intense work while being subject to bullying just to walk away with nothing is unethical, and bullying in a workspace should never be tolerated. But let's dive deeper into the discourse behind, is this actually child labor? Because that's a term that we will see online. Like, just look up Chucklefish controversy and you're gonna see people constantly saying they did child labor. So Chucklefish is in the UK, where the legal age to start part-time work is at 13. And children can start full-time work once they have reached the minimum school leaving age, meaning now they can work up to 40 hours a week. Specifically, they say you can leave school on the last Friday in June if you'll turn 16 by the end of summer. So I'm not sure if Reese and the others worked over 40 hours a week. They said they've poured hundreds of hours into the game overall, but we don't know how these hours were distributed throughout the week. But if they were 16 at the time, this is not considered child labor in the UK, but still, ethically, I think they should have been compensated, especially when we're told that signing that contract was like kind of like your foot getting into the door of the games industry, which is highly competitive and it's very difficult to get into. And this is where we can go back to Bryce. He actually responded to these allegations and he said, "These allegations do not reflect who I am now. I would like to apologize if my words or actions have ever caused any hurt or distress. I pride myself on running an inclusive and progressive company." And I hope you can see now why, with all of this information that we know, the history behind Chucklefish, the history behind Bryce's behaviors, it's safe to be worried about Witchbrook, right? The history of Chucklefish makes people cautious. There are lingering questions about their labor practices, accountability, and whether the studio has really changed. By the way, when I was doing my research for this, I saw a lot of, rumors online saying that Concerned Ape, the developer behind Stardew Valley, has parted ways with Chucklefish exclusively because of these behaviors. I dug a bit deeper and I wanted to see okay, what's the deal here? And I found this statement from Concerned Ape, which is on his blog post, and it said that the reason why he parted ways with Chucklefish is because he wanted to publish his own game. So it had nothing to do with these allegations, but he does emphasize that he believes in fairly compensating developers. So this brings us back to Witchbrook. While all of this was happening, Witchbrook was supposedly in the works. Before the allegations came out, in 2017, Bryce told PC Gamer that the game was a little way away from an official announcement. He said, "We want to make sure we get the tone and feel of the game just right before we send it out to the world." That said, in typical Chucklefish fashion, we're gonna be sharing our in-development work from time to time. Well, this aged like milk because we didn't really hear much about the game apart from it getting its new name, Witchbrook, in 2018. And if you take a look, you're gonna see countless Reddit threads wondering where the heck this game has gone. In fact, most of us thought that this is a dead project. And considering everything we talked about so far regarding Chucklefish's history, the project suspected as dead kind of makes sense, They abandoned Starbound and their reputation took a big hit due to their alleged unethical practices. But to our surprise, in 2025, that Nintendo Direct, it was unexpected because nobody saw this coming. Nobody thought that we're gonna see Witchbrook. Not only are we seeing a new trailer for Witchbrook, but we're also getting a winter 2025 release window. It's wild to think about people who were literally in school when the game was first announced and, it was known as Spellbound. And since then, they've gone to university, they went through many of life's milestones, they even got engaged, married, they have children now. But I'm gonna play the devil's advocate for 1 second. I feel like it's becoming the norm now where we're gonna get a game's announcement and then we just don't hear anything for ages. I hate that this is becoming the norm, but looking at you, Elder Scrolls 6, we've seen that logo, almost 10 years ago as well? And it's like, where the heck is the game?
16 times the detail.
Let's shift our focus back to Witchbrook. Why are fans so nervous? And trust me, it's all for good reason. Simply put, the game has been through development hell. If you never heard about Witchbrook, or maybe you want to learn a little bit about it, the game's concept is a perfect mashup of Stardew Valley and Harry Potter. It's a magic school RPG, and the trailer showed us how beautiful it is. With its pixel art style, charming atmosphere, we see students literally on campus doing rituals, and the player is flying around on a broomstick. And we have so many small key details that the devs have shared. Add to that, promising us a release window, this was like the proof that many have been holding on to. Many people who still wanted to have hope that this game is going to become a reality. The developers encouraged that as well. They started sharing more through their newsletter, the Witchbrook Oracle, with 5 issues released so far, and the last one went live in September 2025. These issues teased what life at school is gonna look like, and I love the attention to the little details. It really feels like reading Bridgerton-style gossip, And I'm not the only one. The internet was eating this up. Everyone was talking about it in Reddit posts, they were analyzing it, they were trying to speculate about mechanics, everyone was really excited. But in October 2025, not so good news dropped. Witchbrook is now delayed to sometime in 2026, and this news was very upsetting to the community. The devs tried to explain why they had to make this choice. They said that this is a big project and it's taking shape exactly as they hoped. They also said that, in their words, they have a hope of creating a living, breathing world for you to explore. And as we bring all those moments together, we're taking the time needed to ensure the world feels rich, immersive, and alive. They shared this interactive map of Mosport, and they mentioned that they're working on adding spellbinding stories, captivating quests, and enchanting systems to enrich your time at Witchbrook College. They also pointed out that all of the colored areas in the map are actually playable, so you can expect to go hiking, and again in their words, through the peaceful green trails of Shad Hollow Forest, with its concealed paths and ancient secrets, or breathing in the salty sea breeze on the golden beaches of Parasol Sands. Mosport Seaport is full of natural beauty and diverse locations. We also have a student village, we've got festivals, Witchbrook College, the Shadbrook Cottage, and more. So they said that they're using this extra time to, quote, explore a few additional exciting opportunities, including additional platforms and language support that we hadn't initially planned, end quote. And honestly, this all sounds really exciting. It seems like there's a beautiful world that's in the works. It has so much life to offer. It's not like a dead game where you just have empty spaces. There seems to be a lot of attention to detail. However, that was not enough for a lot of the community and the fans. They were upset, and there is some solid arguments in there. The lack of communication from the developers is frustrating some, but there's also the division between the community itself, with many losing hope on this game ever seeing the light of day, while others are setting such high expectations that I wonder if the game will be able to be up to par. And I feel like one thing people forget a lot is just because you see an announcement of a game 10 years ago, it doesn't mean that it has been in active development for 10 years. Again, look at Elder Scrolls 6. We have learned time and time again that the game was announced ages ago before its actual development even started. Now, this Reddit thread is solid, where you see the community divide. The initial post, funny enough, was expressing frustration because of the constant frustration that others have over the delays. The user mentions that no money was taken, nobody was lied to, and there is no cost to waiting. So yeah, there is an ongoing frustration because other people are frustrated. It's like, guys, like, can we calm down? Which I get. But there's always a but. The responses also draw some good points where they circle back to the fact that Chucklefish is receiving valid criticism. And this user in particular said that it feels like the developers are sabotaging themselves because so many people are excited for Witchbrook, while Chucklefish just seems to be doing anti-marketing. There's also this comment that says there is two sides to this. Sure, there's no money on the line that gamers have paid for Witchbrook, but fans still have the right to be upset and disappointed over a game that they're hyped about. And they also remind us that Chucklefish do have a history of messing around and getting money for unfinished products, aka Starbound, which I also agree with, and this is why I wanted to start the video with all of the allegations, Chucklefish's history, so that you can see the full picture. But moving a little bit away from Chucklefish, I want to give you an example about a studio that, you know, they are having a little bit of problems right now, but you can see how no matter what happens during the development, there's so much trust in that studio. So in a recent video that I made called What Happened to My Time at Evershine, or I'm not sure what it's gonna be called by the time it's out, but we talk about how certain communities' excitement doesn't have to die just because we have delays or a studio is receiving difficult feedback. For instance, the recent alpha that Evershine had resulted in the developers having to implement many changes to the game, including how the sequence of the gameplay loop is going to be. And a possible delay is okay. Why? Because Pathea Games have proven to take player feedback with both Portia and Sandrock, two games that released into early access. They were very rough when they came out, but now they are incredible games, and that gives the community a lot of faith and confidence that Pathea Games will be able to still come through these obstacles and deliver a great game. However, when a studio has a shaky reputation, it's okay to be worried. And this is something that I talk about briefly in my ranking video for the 53 cozy and farming games that I played last year. I feel like a lot of people in the cozy community just put on rose-colored glasses. If you don't like a game that they love, or you actually criticize a game that they love, they will just freak out, they're gonna panic, and they're gonna be like, no way, this game is fantastic. And they're gonna be like, oh my god, you're being too harsh on the studio. So there's no room for constructive criticism or giving feedback, and that's an issue that I constantly see in the cozy/farming community. Now, it seems like Chucklefish have learned from their mistakes. In 2022, they gave every employee a £4,000 raise to help with the cost of living crisis. They also have a strict no-crunch policy, meaning they refuse to let their employees overwork themselves to meet strict deadlines. This is incredible for developers because their well-being should be the priority, and even though we are an excited fan base, we should respect that time. But funny enough, even the no-crunch policy has become a point of contention among the community. Some fans on Reddit argue that a game shouldn't take this long to develop. This post has some solid arguments, and the response to it is good food for thought. So we see this reply, and it says, crunch is not the issue. As a game developer, I really need people to understand that no crunch isn't what makes game development slow. Game development is slow because of mismanaged resources, departments being out of sync, management overscoping or moving goalposts, stopping and restarting, resources being moved around for different projects, marketing being out of sync with the developer team. I have no idea what's going on at Chucklefish, to be clear. But no crunch is not the problem here, and I would bet money on it because I know for a fact that crunch is a symptom of the problem, not the cause. They announced too early, and development has probably been waxing and waning and not fully in production the entire time. But yeah, no crunch is good and it keeps developers healthy. Developers who are healthy and well managed work faster. Game development is complicated, and most, if not all, of the issues within production are due to mismanagement. Which I also think is a very solid argument when you are having miscommunication. I mean, look at Puff Pals. I'm gonna do an update about that game. Like, holy crap, so much money is just gone, and when you dig through it, it's all because of mismanagement. And when it comes to Witchbrook, you're gonna learn in a bit that there was a redesign midway through the game, which can also extend development time. But let's look at this post on Reddit with the title, "There is no way they intended to release Winter 2025. This has a very thought-provoking comment which might explain why we saw the game in Nintendo's Direct last year, even though the developers surely knew the game wasn't ready for a Winter 2025 release. We see this comment that said, "I read somewhere recently that Nintendo's policy is that to be featured in a Nintendo Direct, like the partner showcase that they just had, the release date has to be within the next year. I speculate that Chucklefish knew the 2025 release was not at all realistic and did it to get in on exposure. The fact that we still haven't seen much, if any, gameplay footage, and that the game wasn't in the most recent partner showcase, so maybe it's more than a year out now, it's pretty alarming. I'm looking forward to the game based on the premise and the aesthetic, but will for sure be waiting on reviews before I buy it." Which I'm not so sure if that is the case. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. But here's what's alarming. If you look at this same post, you're gonna see allegations calling the team a scam. They're saying the game is not real. They're saying that the team doesn't even know how to run a team and more. So it's safe to say there's so much there's a mess happening right now in the Witchbrook community. And you know, this is where the issue falls of announcing games way too early, even when the developers don't even have any gameplay to show, especially a game that is massively anticipated. In the case of Witchbrook, it seems to tick the box for a genre that is starving for a good witchy RPG, especially one that adds cozy elements to the mix. Heck, how many cozy witchy games have we heard of that either did not release yet, but we heard about them ages ago, or they released but they were pretty underwhelming? And apart from that, Witchbrook is also falling into the area of what happens when you have such high expectations for a game that we don't have gameplay footage for yet. Even though we have seen different descriptions from the developers of what we can do in the game, we've also seen the developers' desires to make this feel like a completely immersive and living world. We don't have any gameplay footage. Better yet, we're not even sure how the gameplay loop is going to be. This means we don't know if the gameplay loop might fall flat. And I've called out so many cozy games because they kind of use, you know, the genre to just give you half-assed projects that are boring, that not even a toddler will be, you know, entertained with. So think about Tales of the Shire, Sugar Dew Island, and more. I play so many cozy games, farming games, but my main thing that I love in my free, you know, me time is RPGs. Heck, you can even see it in my setup. A lot of people like wonder, why do you cover cozy games but you love RPG? Like, I adore RPGs. That's why I have them all around me. I've got Witcher, you know, poster here next to it, a big cyberpunk one. You can see I'm obsessed with cyberpunk, Witcher over there. You know, cyberpunk here, Witcher tattoos. Like, I love RPGs so much, and I'm very specific about how they need to be so that I'm engaged in the gameplay. Sure, I would love to have a great story, but for me, if the gameplay sucks, no story is ever going to keep me engaged. But when we talk about cozy and farming games in particular, the reason why I love them is a lot of the times, you know, I will be so just tired of everything that I'm doing every day. You know, we are adults now, we've got so many responsibilities, so many chores, we're working, we're studying, we have so much that we're doing. But cozy and farming games, they are this chill way for you to finally unwind and relax. And the one thing that makes a few farming and cozy games become like my top tier, these are the ones that I recommend all the time, is the ones that I will say, you know what, I'm just gonna play 1 hour, and then I end up playing 5. Now it's 5 a.m. and I'm not sleeping because I'm playing them. And I don't know if Witchbrook is going to be able to give us that, because again, we don't know how the gameplay loop is going to be. We don't know what's our typical day going to look like. How are the seasons going to impact our day-to-day activities? How in-depth are the festivals going to be? How will the RPG elements of attending classes, gathering knowledge, learning spells all going to come together? I really like this blog post by Tom Wilson from February 2026. They express this very accurately. So they say, if one were to dig a little deeper into the developer's comments on its Discord server, the smattering of blog posts it has released, and the sliver of footage we've been treated to, it appears that Witchbrook isn't really shaping up to be what was promised 10 years ago. In fact, while there will be some school sim elements, it seems like they'll be pulled back and merely serve as context for the foraging and delivering activities you're gonna be spending most of the time busying yourself with. And I learned from him that there's speculation that the game might have went through a redesign mid-development, which is doable, but it will mess up the allocated budget and the time frame. So yeah, let's see what Tom said. While a redesign is fine, albeit somewhat disappointing, unless Witchbrook's development bizarrely only started very recently or within the past 2 years, despite being announced nearly 10 years ago, it should be very much along in production. In fact, the original specific 2025 release date would imply that Chucklefish felt some level of confidence in the game's current state. Yet, now Witchbrook has been delayed and simply has a vague 2026 release date, with the developers stating via Discord that, while it is definitely coming out, the timelines are hard to predict. This is all frankly very concerning, especially when coupled with Chucklefish quietly announcing its cutting of previously promised features like combat. And that's also something that I didn't know. I didn't know that there was going to be combat and it got pulled back. I don't mind, like, I love RPGs, so seeing combat is great, but if it doesn't serve a purpose, then I'd rather not have it. But now we get the full picture about Witchbrook. I'm still very excited about it. I cannot wait to learn more, but there is room for concern about this game's fate. Witchbrook can either under-deliver, deliver just right, or over-deliver. Who knows? As long as we don't have clear communication from the devs, we're not gonna find out. But I'm interested in knowing, what do you think? What is happening behind the scenes, and are you still excited or are you a little bit worried? I already uploaded this video on YouTube and it was set as unlisted because it was going to go live today. However, I was taking a little scroll on YouTube and I see this video from the YouTube channel Yans noticing that Witchbrook is appearing on the Xbox app. You can actually install the game, but you can't play it. So who knows, maybe the game is going to shadow drop. Regardless, we can safely say Chucklefish has been horrible at communicating with their community, so let's wait and see what's gonna happen. And on the topic of games that are currently in development and we're a bit worried about, I am excited about Evershine, but you know, its development has been going through a little bit of hiccups here and there, so if you want to learn more about it, you can check it out in this video. Thank you to my YouTube and Patreon bubblies who make videos like this possible, and a shout out goes to The Game Dimension, Jake Logan, Emmy, Blessing, Faye, Fufei, Cookie, Emmy, Andrew, Grey Wolf, and Charming Kara for going the extra mile. Until next time, stay bubbly.